taking that and applying it to politically and how the different governments around the world are responding to this, to COVID-19, we're also seeing us as citizens of a country having to be honest about our own governments and our own leaders in how they respond, or they themselves in what they do or don't do exposes who they are. There's like a spotlight is on them, like, okay, guys, what now? And that in itself brings out a certain truth about who they are, that post-corona, post-lockdowns, we should be in a position to evaluate them.
Oh, we're going to know who everybody is. We're going to know who everybody is. It's interesting, like people like the mayor of New York, a lot of reports are, people are like, wow, we didn't, the cats running New York, people are surprised. They feel like Cuomo and them have actually stepped up and really actually done a good job and really laid things down in ways that were surprising. And then oddly enough, in New York, a lot of times it's the citizens themselves who are actually not keeping up with the political vision that says, no, we have to deal with this seriously. In Malawi, we were late. I saw political rallies long after folks were talking about the need to isolate. I'm seeing different things. I have to ask you about what's going on with Ramaphosa in South Africa. I'm seeing different things. I was given a Facebook group entry to a Ramaphosa Facebook group where it seems like he's actually directly in there, maybe even writing to citizens, like going, I don't know if that's real or what, but it's like, you have to tell me. I don't know, but I sense that, obviously there's a huge shift going on in SA. I think the whole world is curious, like, what is SA on right now? Because as a Malawian, I know that we're only going to follow you guys because you guys tend to be the big leagues of Africa to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's what we have seen, and I can confidently say that we have seen our government and our president act, right? The lockdown is important. There have been some issues of relaxing some of the regulations and restrictions that had put in place, and there's been a lot of debate around that. But by and large, there has been a lot of action. What is interesting is that some of the actions on the part of government, people are saying, oh, you can do that? Why didn't you do that all along? Right?
Oh, yeah.
So there's that conversation that's happening on the periphery of like, wait, hold on. You cats, if you really want to, you can do it. So something as simple as, we know there is a need for people to have access to water. And we know that in a number of our rural areas, people don't have access to water. So what we've seen is a rollout of water tankers all over the place, like mass, right? Because people need to, wash their hands. But people are seeing that, which is a legitimate, firstly, government needs to do that, right? And there's also the legitimacy in asking, why didn't you do that all along? Right? So you have to balance it out between you acting, and we're happy that you're acting, and why is it like almost the first time that we see you cats acting in unison so successfully and effectively?
Yeah.
Why couldn't you do it all along?
Yeah.
That's
the same question that's going. Yeah. That's the same question that's popping around in the United States. It's like, well, all of a sudden you have money for that. Where was that before? You have $2 trillion to pull out right now to deal with this. And we've had a homeless situation forever that's been, destroying so many elements of the society and just making it hard for everyone, and now, obviously you left it in a space where, the proliferation of disease amongst the homeless is somewhat inevitable. And now we see that, oh, you could have been doing something about that the whole time. So that's the big one. And so the question becomes, what kind of shift in our consciousness is that going to create as we look at them when we come to the end of this? Are we going to hold them accountable? Because America's finding out that the only thing that's going to save the United States is socialized medicine. And they've been saying the whole time it can't be done. But all of a sudden, they're finding, no, we have to get tests to everyone for free. At first, in the first like few weeks in the United States, those tests cost over $1,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they figured out if the test costs $1,000, no one can get the test, and people will avoid the test, and the disease will spread, and we won't have anybody to go to work.
Yeah. Yeah. It comes down to that, right? The impact on the economy. But also, if you flip it and bring it back to the personal, the fact that, yeah, governments are doing things that they should have done all along. I'm looking at myself right now. I'm like, okay, one of the things that I want to do is create my own content. And for a while, I'm like, yo, I need to, sort it out and get the funding to be able to get and do this. And now I'm like, wait, hold on, you're in this lockdown, you're alone. What can you do with what you have? And then here we are with this conversation. Here we are with this channel that I'm getting off. Why didn't I do that all along? So there's a positivity in the situation that one finds himself in, that you can, make a plan.
Yeah. Well, I mean, then in that sense, then, because of that self-reflection that you've put forth there, then we do have to sympathize with the fact that crisis brings out things in us that we were unable to see from a different angle, and then kind of have a little sympathy with everybody that says, hey, like that was yesterday, here we are now. Because if we hold each other so accountable for yesterday, we can fight over yesterday till the end of time. The big question will be, where do we go from here forward? And the more people can adjust to the notion that I don't need to necessarily hold on to my anger for what was happening before, I need to move forward with this shift and see where we can come together and move forward. I think that's healthy, because that's a lot of what I'm seeing in social media right now from my heads. A lot of my hip hop heads are pissed off because they feel so much like, where were the rest of you? We kind of were awake to a bunch of things a while ago. Where were you? You know what I'm saying? And it's like,
but at least
it matter?
At least people are coming on board. Yeah, no, it doesn't. It actually doesn't. Because I suppose with all of us, even if you are a conscious head that has been doing this for years, something happened in your life at some point where you woke up to it. And so if it's happening right now for other people, for ourselves, at least it's happening.
Oh, yeah. I woke up after the Rodney King thing in Los Angeles. That's the thing that just woke. I mean, I was teaching kids in the hood and so forth, and working at like recreation centers and so forth. But I remember being in a room full of black people when that Rodney King decision went down. And what I felt, I knew the city's going to burn tonight and nothing is ever going to be the same. You could feel it, and that's what happened. But it really wasn't until that time where I kind of went, you know what? I have to actually really dedicate my art, my whole focus towards consistently trying to remind people that we're in a struggle, because there's moments where it gets light and we drift away from that and so forth, and then we come back around to it. And by the time we come back around to it, we've lost a lot in the process, which is, I think, where we are now, in the sense that, when I talk to my artistic community from, let's say, Yeovil in like the late 90s and really listen to them, they're always like, nah, that thing we were doing is dead, man. It's gone. There's no parts of it. It's a relic. All that hope and optimism and everything, people are done with that. And I truly believe there's really no time when you can be done with the value of some hope.
You remind me of what Fela spoke about at some point when he was describing his music, saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the circumstances under which we live in as Africans there is no time to be talking about. I didn't necessarily agree, but there's no time for us to talk about love. There's struggle, right? But there is time to talk about love, but there's also the need to talk about struggle.
I see that. I think the thing is that, and this is where we've lost a lot from the patriarchal understanding of reality. Not paying close attention to love may have been what took fella out, right? Because in all reality, the way that his relationships with women are the thing that eventually took the soldier out. And so oftentimes now for me, the question, and he gave his part, man. There's no doubt that Fela gave us some direction, but I feel like one of the things we failed to realize as brothers is that it has to be a confluence. The idea that struggle and love are separate is bullshit. Because
love and war.
If I go ask Tony,
Stogie T.
Bro, I was listening to the song today. He posted it on Instagram, and it got me deep in my feels. Like I think he was laughing at me because it got so deep into my feelings. Partly because my father was also a revolutionary, and he sort of hints at the idea of the contradictions with revolutionaries. My father was a revolutionary in Malawi, but I know from my mother that my father didn't want my mother to be a singer, and so that wasn't something he saw matching up with their political aspirations and so forth. And, my mom looked at people like Dorothy Masauko and Mary Makeba, who became these political singers, and in all reality, I feel like I'm an amalgam of my mother and my father, because he was this political beast and she was this musical person. And I've always been trying to merge the two. But one of the things I learned, because my father was a revolutionary who didn't so much always hear my mother, and that also relates to Malcolm X, right? There's a time I'm reading, so one of the things that I remember checking out in Malcolm's work was where he said, I told my wife that Elijah Muhammad would always take care of us. And she looked at me like I was crazy. She read through that like, no, you never say that about another man. You don't know that to be true.
She was right.
You need to be looking at. Yeah, she was right. And oftentimes that guy who's caught up in the struggle and thinking of a struggle one way has forgot to think about the woman next to him as part of that struggle. My father, for example, didn't want my mom to go to school. He felt like, oh, I'll take care of that part. You just take care of the kids. But he died leaving her with 7 kids on welfare in the United States of America. And luckily she had, like an associate's degree. She was able to go back to school after he passed away, get a degree, and start a creche. That's where the Letambulu and son ended up going to our creche, right? But my mother was able to go back to school and develop herself to a level where she could take care of all of us. Had he been where I think we should be now, if there's some man involved in political struggle right now in Africa who's not making sure his wife knows exactly what he's up to and how to keep that whole consciousness in the family and passed down to the children so that what he's built can move forward, he's wasting his time. We have to have learned that lesson already. And a huge part of it is, this is one thing I think is very fascinating that's hit me over the years, is that many of our heroes had flaky relationships with women. And if you're going to be a married man and a guy devoted to our struggle, how do I trust you if you're going to lie and cheat on the person that you bring children into the world with?
Right. At
You
the same
can't
time,
really care about the...
At the same time, going back to love and war, does his cheating in any way take away the intent, promise, validity of his being a revolutionary?
It didn't before because that was another phase of life. But we're at the phase now where if we repeat the same set of cycles, we've learned nothing.